I bought this truck about 2 years ago in a salvage auction, and what I did in the last episode was throw in all the components to add an additional racing shock to the front suspension. So if you want to check that out, you can go to the last video in the series. Next thing I'm doing is adding some additional strength to it, and I'm going to be adding a double shear kit to the coil bucket. What this is going to do is add some additional strength, keep that coil bucket from flexing. Alright, so here you can see the bypass hoop and that additional shock that's in there. And now what I'm going to be focusing on is this area right here. The coil bucket itself has this pin that goes through it, the upper control arm sits on, and that thing can actually flex and twist. So I want to keep that from happening, otherwise if that bends, you're in a whole world of trouble. I'm going to take some precautions and we're going to add this. This double shear kit. It's made out of a 1/4 inch plate. What it's going to do, it's actually going to sit in there. That top bolt is going to go through that hole, and then it's going to get welded to the frame, welded to the coil bucket, and the same thing is going to happen on the other side. So let me rip this apart and I'll show you how these guys get installed. Alright, now I have the coil over and the shock out. The next step is going to be taking this bolt out that runs all the way through. It's kind of a pain in the butt on these. I actually had to cut the inner fender well out a little bit to be able to get this to slide fully out. So I'm going to get that out and then we can start mocking it up. Alright, so here's a little update. We've got those in there, both sides. I switched the direction that the pin is inserted. Rather than the pin going from here back, I switched it up and I went from this side to this side, just because it's a little bit easier than dodging the fender well and all the stuff that's up here. But it looks really nice, sits in there well. It's all cleaned up and ready to weld. So I'm going to tighten up that bolt on top, tack it in place, double check that that pin moves easily through there even when it's tacked up. I don't want anything binding or making this even more of a headache to get out, because these things really suck to pull out. So tack it up, check it all, and then I guess final weld. Alright, so they're tacked in place. I loosened up the bolt and made sure that it would spin freely, making sure that these plates aren't binding weird, they're not twisting in any weird direction, keeping that bolt from spinning in that hole, otherwise it's going to be even more of a pain to get it in and out when I need to. And that's all good, which means everything's lined up like it should be. And now I'm going to start welding it all together. Alright, it's all welded up. It went really well. I think everything looks nice. I took the spindle off the upper control arm just to get better access to things because it's kind of tight to get in these little nooks and crannies. But I'm pretty happy with how it all turned out. The other side's going to be more challenging because there's a wiring harness that runs right on top of the frame rail. So I'm probably going to have to modify the bracket, the shorter bracket, to be able to get over that. It's going to be weird to weld in there. I'm not moving the harness, so we're just going to have to make it work. But we'll go on that side and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright, this is where we stand with the driver's side. Everything's taken apart and I've mocked this in here. But, I mean, I don't understand what they were thinking when they designed this part, because they make concessions for the brake line to go through it, just like the other side, and that works nicely. But this is exactly the same as the passenger side, but the setup on the driver's side is not the same. You've got this wiring harness that comes up here along the frame rail, and then it gets right in the way. So, I mean, I'm not going to mess with the wiring. I'm not going to reroute this whole harness. I think that causes way more headaches than trying to figure out how to modify this thing. But if I cut a notch to make room for the wiring harness, then you kind of lose this whole corner. And if you lose the whole corner, then it's really not very structurally sound. And there's nowhere to weld either. I mean, if I did that, I'd have to cut off this mount for it so that I could access the back side and back here also. But I don't want to weld so close to the wiring harness that I start melting it. So I need to think on this for a minute. So I'm going to end up cutting this. Where I'm going to cut it is right here. You can see that little square line. I'm going to go from that corner down through that radius, and then this bottom section gets mounted to the frame. I'm going to cut off 1 3/16 inches high from the corner right there, and then I'm going to cut off in between the 8 and the 1 there. So this whole corner section is going to be chopped out, as well as part of this tab, or this whole tab actually. So we cut that and then we'll test fit it again, see how it looks. Alright, I've got this in here now. Got the control arm back on after like an hour of fighting with that stupid bolt. Here's what it looks like. I've cut this. You can see that I've got plenty of clearance on the top there. I can hit the frame there, and I can get back in this corner and I can weld up there, and then maybe about 1 inch of welding there. So I lose out on the whole corner, and I think what I'm going to end up doing is taking a piece from here and coming down to the frame, but it's so hard to get in there and see because my head hits this and I can't see down. I'm probably going to do that when I cut out all of this stuff. So for now I'm going to get it all prepped to weld, clean up all the paint, and then reassemble it again, make sure it all fits, and then we can do our final welds. So it's all welded up. It went really well. This side has a decent amount of weld in there, and down here on this pin. So eventually I'm going to add a piece that goes down to the frame just to make it even more strong. But that's it. Double shear kit is installed. I'm just going to wait for these things to cool down a little bit, and then I'll yank the control arm out and I'll pull everything else out and get it all cleaned up for paint. I can use some love. It's not looking super great at the moment, so we'll take some time and we'll prep it all really nice, get a fresh coat of paint on there, and then the shocks go in. We're almost done. Alright, so there's a change of plans. I'm not actually going to be prepping this for paint and kind of finishing it up like I had expected to in this video. The truck is actually going to move out of my driveway and into a shop. This is a relatively new development, so I'm super excited about it. I'm going to be collaborating with a guy that was one of the builders for the Discovery Channel TV show, The Diesel Brothers. He actually built their Mint 400 race truck and has built other trophy trucks and is a really talented builder and fabricator. And I am going to be moving my truck into his shop, and he's going to be helping me build the rest of it. I'm going to have access to all sorts of really cool tools that I don't have here at home, plus a wealth of knowledge. I mean, this guy has spent a lot of time building really high-end race trucks and pre-runners and stuff, and so I think just being able to be around somebody like that is going to make this build so much better, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm going to throw the shocks and stuff back in this, and then I'll show you what that looks like, but you won't see the totally finished product until I'm down at the shop. So let's get to it. Alright, we're at the shop. Donnie's pulling the truck in. We did it.
This truck, it was another project that another guy was building with friends. Got the Class 8 race truck. Everybody in the shop gets to participate in, whoever wants to. We're going to build this for fun, just have some good, go race 1450 with it and have some fun with it. Suburban. It's a customer build, that's a 2-year build.